The first video that I put out onto my channel was this video of you should just choose Laravel. The thing that made me jump full send into the Laravel ecosystem is this batteries included piece, where I didn't have to piece together an ORM that I'm talking to a database with, as well as some form of connector for dealing with files, as well as something to manage authentication, as well as pick and choose the particular framework pieces that usually you end up utilizing for 90% of applications. Usually I had to cobble that all together within the JavaScript ecosystem. But I think I found this tool that solves a lot of those gripes. And if you are still in the JavaScript ecosystem and maybe Laravel isn't something for you, or even if you're just looking to expand your tool set and look at what Node.js and what the JavaScript ecosystem as a whole has to offer now, take a look at this.
All right, and send. Perfect. All right, user number 6 just signed up. Hey Siri, set a timer for 10 minutes. We need to get this drip campaign out the door for new sign up. Hey, what are you doing? Who else is gonna send these emails? Every single minute I need to watch to make sure my users are signed up so that I can get them emails as promptly as possible. So I got timers. I could just use Bento. They have workflows and triggers specifically meant for those kind of automations. Yeah, that sounds better.
Seriously, Bento is fantastic, even if you only use a small part of it like I do. My favorite feature, being able to automate my email flows, saying once something happens in my code, and of course there's SDKs for literally everything, I can say I want to wait a certain number of time and then I want to send or this email or start this campaign. It just makes the things I want to do within my application easier, and it makes it better for my users because I don't have to bother them as much as I would otherwise, because all the automation's built in and flexible for my use cases. So seriously, try Bento, let them know Josh Siri sent you, and get started with it today. It's this project called Better T Stack, created by this author called Aman Varshni. I apologize if I got your name wrong, Aman, or pronounced it incorrectly. But Better T Stack was created so that you can kind of have all these bits and pieces in the JavaScript world cobbled together for you. You have this better starting point, a CLI for scaffolding, end-to-end type-safe TypeScript projects. And while, yes, usually a lot of these tools are not something I would reach for right off the bat and say, hey, I'm going to use all of this, I do still like to learn, to build, to see what's out there, especially within the JavaScript ecosystem and everything else. And this has been a fantastic starting point to just get up and running, to not have to do all the legwork of putting all this together. So why don't we build out a project just with the default that it has options, and then I'll show you this particular options that you can't have. Let's throw that into a new project. Let's get Claude Code running and see what we can do. So yeah, it's better-t-stack.dev. So what are the options? This is the default stack. You basically get to give it a name, and then it gives you the particular command that you can use. It's bun by default. I think I have bun installed on my system. It's a lot faster than something like npm. But so looks like for web front end, we have tan-stack router as a default. We have no native front end, so you're not using anything like Expo. We have a Node.js backend, which is a more popular choice nowadays. So type safe as well as minimalistic backend. And then it looks like we have bun as a runtime. We could do Node.js, but we'll do bun for that. And then TRPC as an API with a SQLite database using Drizzle. So that DB setup is just going to be no Cloud DB integration. Of course, you can use any one of these, like Cloudflare, for example, and then no deployment. We could do like deploy to Cloudflare workers, and we could do like Cloudflare D1. Runtime set to Cloudflare workers. Great. We could use Better Auth for that, as well as bun. And then we could add a turbo repo. We could use Biome for linting and formatting, as well as like maybe a simple to-do application or an AI integration. Looks like it's cutting off right here on the bottom, but this is where we have initialized Git repository or not. And so the default stack looks like it's web app with tan-stack router, bun, Hono, and SQLite. which is kind of what we saw. But if I changed it to that TanStack router, of course, we can use Nuxt, Svelte, Solid. We can have a different backend like Convex. I have a video that you can find up there in the far right corner where it talks about just how cool I think Convex is, where it is kind of this reactive database by default. So it looks like both Convex is the option that you can use on Cloudflare Workers runtime. Since I've already done a video about Convex, I'm going to keep it with Hono, and this looks great to me. We're going to do Svelte with ORPC just to have a little bit of diversity. So yeah, we get this whole kind of command that we can then copy and utilize. So bun create, we are going to call it, let's go ahead and say this is the Svelte-tastic T-stack. Svelte-tastic T-stack. There we go. And we'll go ahead and copy this. So it's going to use Cloudflare Workers with D1 database that is a SQLite using a Hono backend with Svelte on the front end. I bet that means Svelte kit. Again, I don't think there's, because especially with Nuxt and Solid, I'm thinking Svelte means Svelte kit. I do like TanStack Router. I do like all of these other options, but we're going to try Svelte. And then we have Cloudflare Workers as a runtime, ORPC. I don't know where Bun can be deployed to. I'm guessing it's just like the no deployment option. Then you just put it onto something like Vercel or something like that. I have not gotten the chance to play around with BetterOff, so I'm curious what that looks like out of the box. And then we're using Bun as the package manager. I don't necessarily know if we need this monorepo build system, but I bet it works great with having SvelteKit and something like Hono all in one directory. So I'm just going to copy this. We're going to open up our code editor, and let's go ahead and say, let's just paste this in. This is going to create that Svelte-tastic T-stack. And fingers crossed, we don't have to do anything. Again, I think this is a great starting option, especially if you're in the JavaScript ecosystem, or you are just looking to continue to learn and build and create in the JavaScript ecosystem, because usually the tough part is putting everything together. And unless you have a specific starter kit or template that you already love and use, or you just have something that you specifically built or have seen others build, this is probably a great option for you, especially if you wanted to kind of pick and choose. Maybe this time you wanted to use, Cloudflare on the back end with Convex, but then the next time you want to use Hono, and you still get that great starting point. So again, I don't think this takes the place of a batteries included framework like a Phoenix or a Rails or a Laravel, but this does give you a great starting point without having to put all those pieces together yourself. You are at the mercy now of a creator like Aman, where you're like, hey, if something doesn't quite work, maybe that's not necessarily Aman's fault, but you are using this that is kind of all those pieces put together. And so because each one of these separate pieces is built, is maintained, is deployed by specific individual creators, that's where the downsides fall. But that's not any different than if you were to put these together yourself. So let's go into in this particular stack. Okay, we do get some next steps. We're going to go into it. We're going to complete the D1 database setup first. So we need to see these database commands below. We need to log into Cloudflare. We need to create a D1 database. We need to update this JSON-C with the database ID and name, migrations, apply locally. Let's go ahead and do that. So I deleted this database already, so I don't necessarily know if this database name and ID is something that you have to keep a secret. Since it's deployed as a JSON file, I don't think it is, but just to be safe, I deleted it, so don't try anything. Sorry. Okay, using Drizzle, I'm just following these commands. This is not something that I've worked with. I'm just saying, hey, let me get it to a specific point. I'm going to test it out, look at the code, and then let's run Claude Code, initialize it, and see where we go from there. So we got the generations already done. I think we ran the bun db generate. Perfect. So now we can apply those migrations locally. So we have bun Wrangler d1 migrations apply, and then looks like we need the your DB name, which I think is called Svelte-tastic -- local. Let's see if that does it. Perfect. So it looks like it used Drizzle to generate the migration schema. So migrations that are kind of given out of the box for a lot of, and I would assume a lot of this is kind of similar to Better Auth rather than Regular specific. These are just Drizzle creating those migrations for D1 Cloudflare database. This is schema for auth. So this is a Drizzle schema. Again, I'm not going to take a look too much at this code just yet. So before we finish all of these instructions. All right, I already kind of hit a hiccup in the sense of a lot of the instructions is kind of, it's dependent on specific parts of that framework, specific parts of those particular libraries that you're kind of cobbling together. And I didn't know how Drizzle connected to Cloudflare D1, so I had to go to the Drizzle docs to find what it was looking for. Since we did say that this should be a mono repo, I'm curious if we can run, bun dev from the root. So if I was to even close out of that particular server and go into the root, if I can run bun dev, does that? Yeah, that runs turbo dev. Okay, so we're running the web dev server as well as the server dev server. And so now we should be able to open this up and have that. It looks like the API is still not working. And we're sign in doesn't look like it's working either. Okay, there we go. We're connected to this API. Perfect. So we have two files, and I'll kind of plop this over here so we can see. So we kind of have these two versions. And why don't I actually open this up in the full version of it. So this is the turbo repo file right here. So we have a apps folder, which has the server directory, and then we have the web directory. And so that's our mono repo that we have. The server looks like it has source, it has the DB migrations that we kind of already took a look at, where we have this text that the Drizzle Studio has already applied. We have specific routers, and I would imagine, yeah, this is ORPC's version of particular information and how we're sending data from the, again, type safe from the server to the client. So if I was to say this is a private message, I would imagine this is what we will see then on the screen. Let's refresh. There we go. This is a private message. Perfect. And so the user is the specific context of the user. So the reason, the whole thing of why a lot of people like this type safety thing, if I was to say that this is now a messages, and I was to go into the dashboard page, this is probably going to throw an error where this particular private data, and it looks like, yeah, there we go. This message does not exist on type message. So if I was to kind of pull this up, looks like, yes, we are looking for the messages property. And it's as simple as that, being able to have that kind of type safe front end to back end. So that is definitely an advantage of something like this, and that it's already hooked up for you. I have not used ORPC. I have used TRPC before, but this looks like just a different version. But yeah, so this is a front end that is built specifically by Svelte. And let's see if we do have any kind of back end, or is this just straight Svelte? It looks more like Svelte. We do have the plus page. So this is technically Svelte kit because stuff like plus page or plus layout, that is Svelte kit. That's its routing application, or the front end routing portion of Svelte. But a lot of this is we're getting things on, we don't have any kind of like TANSAC query or anything out of the box. This is just using like an on-mount hook to do all of the loading, as well as putting in any kind of information. So then we also have the particular ORPC client. This is what it is using to grab the information from this particular instance of ORPC. All right. Yeah. And again, a lot of this is just all of this boilerplate that you would typically have to set up within a JavaScript application, but now you don't have to think about it, really. You don't have to worry about it too much. I'm curious how Claude Code does. I'm curious how it grabs this information and uses, this type safety feature. So let's initialize a new Claude Code in this instance, and let's see if we can get Bookmark it up and running. So this is in the main repo, the mono repo, which should have our apps as well for both web and server. Usually people would say the benefit of something like a full stack, one singular language file, like a JavaScript front end, back end kind of project, is that you don't kind of confuse the LLM where you're kind of working across multiple stacks, how you're connecting them. Is that better than a batteries included framework like a Rails or a Laravel or a Phoenix? Or is the issue also then with knowing that, hey, we have these two different sides of the puzzle where all of these pieces are now cobbled together, and maybe we're using outdated information or sources from one or the other. I still am going to ask it to use MCP servers such as Context 7. If I don't have that already running right now, I'll make sure to run it, and then we'll go from there. Now, Claude Code just initialized everything, and one of the neat parts that I didn't get to mention is a lot of people like that kind of simplicity of what something like a better auth might bring to this kind of better T stack, where you do have everything put together, but you still have very bare bones. So there is hardly any styling. These components that come in with the sign-on form, I believe this is all better auth in a lot of ways, where these components give you all of these pieces, and it's then just, hey, you can use them how you want, and it's automatically going to give you all these schemas and validation, everything like that. I know better auth out of the box also includes things like being able to hook into two-factor authentication, being able to hook into reset passwords, and you're not going to get the email provider connections as well. It just gives you those primitives. So it's kind of like one step above building your own in a lot of ways. And now we're just going to add this particular prompt to say, hey, this is what we want to build. Let's use the Context 7 for any kind of up-to-date information about Svelte, as well as Node.js. Because while I didn't take a look at it, the server is where the Node.js implementation looks. So this is the index.ts, where that routing, as well as those API calls, are kind of put all together in one, this RPC route. So this initial prompt is probably a little bit more information than I would normally give, because that initialization from Claude Code should have enough information to know, okay, what kind of tools are we already working with? But I do want to be a little bit more thorough than I might typically be. So let's run this prompt, see what Claude Code gives back. I'm probably not going to change too much or reprompt things, mostly because I want to see how it works out of the box and see, is something like this a better T-stack that's cobbled together? Does this work better with something like AI, like Claude Code? So first off, it does create the bookmark schema, so that way we get that migration up and running. I'm curious if it is going to run like the bun db push command, which also syncs it with Cloudflare. That is the piece that would be interesting and also very, very intriguing if it does nail, because then we have this kind of local development environment that is also synced with the production environment. So next up is creating the particular ORPC router marks, where it's saying, hey, this is what is needed on the API end of things, to say this is when we create a bookmark. Protected procedures is where it has to be authenticated. I think we can actually say how it's protected. I don't know if that's going to be a specific middleware within Node.js or if that happens on the ORPC things. I haven't dove into that particular in that world in quite some time. And I might have been wrong in the sense that looks like it is using Svelte query, unless it is completely, hallucinating that and thinking that it does have Svelte query already attached to this particular application. But if it does, that's nice. That's a nice little nicety, I guess, within this stack. Now we're trying to create the database migration in order to make sure everything's up and running. Looks like it's having a little bit of errors within that particular drizzle setup. So let's see what happens. All right, Claude Code was not that much help, and I don't know if this is just because I didn't give it enough information, or it just doesn't know enough about this particular stack put together. But basically, because there is this mono repo, I had to be in the app development or the app folder, the app directory, in order to apply the changes to the remote server for Wrangler, the Cloudflare database. And then I had to make sure that those changes were pushed using bun db push. So that's Drizzle's way of applying those changes with the migrations to Wrangler using the bun Wrangler command. But then I had to actually make sure that those migrations were pushed and deployed both in that local and remote server. And so now I'm getting a 200 OK on bookmarks, where before I was not. So we should be able to be good to go, at least to try to check this out within our application. And so, yeah, it looks like we have our bookmarks page. Some styles are a little bit off, but we have the ability to add a bookmark. Let's say first one. Again, styles are way off. First one, you can't see this, but that says first one. We'll go ahead and say this is drizzle. And we'll create a description. Description looks like you have the ability to add a tag, maybe first add. Okay, there, nice. Create bookmark. Sweet. We have this ability to see the bookmark. Everything looks good. We can edit. Can we delete? We can. Great. So all of those particular functions are working great. First, save that. New one. Tag one. Add. Create. Let's sign out, see if we see those bookmarks. So this is the authorization piece. Dashboard, we do not see the bookmarks. Refresh. I saw like a flash something. I don't know if that was a bookmark or just like another page. But yeah, it looks like it's specifically linked to a particular user, which is great. So authorization, good to go. Authentication, still good to go. That was kind of out of the box. So yeah, it looks like, Claude did a great job of creating that. And the application gives a good bare bones to start it. So what do we have? I had those migrations and just look like the actual deployment and pushing to Cloudflare to get this up and running on Cloudflare workers, which is the only piece that it kind of struggled a little bit. So we do now have that routers where we have the bookmarks, and it looks like this is where, okay, we have a create procedure list is where we have to make sure this is where we have that. We need to make sure that this is equal to the session, the context session user. So that is their particular bookmarks. And then when we create, I'm curious how it links it to a particular user. Yeah, links, you will create a new bookmark with the user ID. So we have DB schema of bookmarks. So yeah, we have a user ID. Perfect. That is linked to the text user ID. It references the user ID. So importing user from this auth TS. Great. So that makes a ton of sense. And then we have a select bookmark and an insert bookmark, which is I'm assuming it is inferring based off of what this particular type is. And then that's that router file. Looks like none of these changed. It's just those information. And then in web, we have that new component for bookmark card, but this page didn't change too much other than adding those particular pages. This is more like a single page application, particularly within this individual page is where a lot of that got added into for bookmarks. So yeah, if I had to reach for an all JavaScript framework stack, Better T-Stack is probably where I would start. One, because I'm not too familiar with a bunch of different parts of these tools in the sense that I don't feel comfortable enough at this point in time to put all these together. It would take a day for me. It would take, a couple of hours in the sense that this gives me that up and running from the get-go, and it gives me all the tools that I would need for the pieces that I would want. The ability to kind of pick and choose the pieces that I would want is fantastic, again, with all of these different options. So if you're someone who is building the JavaScript framework and you're like, hey, I don't necessarily know which pieces I would normally choose, I don't have a starter kit that's out of the box, then definitely take a look at the Better T-Stack. If you're also someone who's just curious about how the JavaScript framework world looks currently, maybe you do exist within the Laravel world or the Rails world or the Phoenix world, or you just haven't touched anything backend, or maybe you're backend, you haven't touched anything front end in a while, this is a great way to kind of just get your feet a little bit wet within what's new, what's fresh, what's now. So use this, keep building, and until next time, keep creating.